Joel Lalgee and Marcus Sawyer welcome you to AI and Recruiting, the show where they break down how AI is transforming hiring, leadership, and the future of work. Expect real talk, smart tools, and bold conversations with the people shaping what's next. Let's get into it.
So I'm very, very excited today to have Ran Harpaz join me today. And we are going to dive into a really interesting and topical discussion about the rise of the solopreneur and the work that Ran is doing at Lettuce. Ran, welcome. How you doing?
Thank you. It's great to be here. It's a wonderful day out here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to not only hear your story and your background, and I know we've had some conversations offline, but to share this with the audience and the amazing work that you're doing with the company of one to help those businesses scale. So, Ran, why don't you just start by maybe telling the audience a little bit more about yourself and your background and how you actually got into building Lettuce?
Sure. Thank you for that. So I've been a technologist for many, many years, started coding at a very young age. And over the years, worked with a lot of people who are uniquely special and qualified at doing something. And typically it was in the context of, we're building a startup, this never been done before. I need this expert, let me go find them. And through the years, I ended up having a network of folks who are all uniquely qualified. And, I've started in deep tech and cybersecurity, et cetera. And then I did a bunch of work while I was at McKinsey and PayPal around corporate strategy and building things for, great large companies. And then went back to, okay, I want to build something, like do some startups. And the common thread across all of those is building things that unlock something that hasn't been done before. So for example, just before starting Lettuce, I was part of Hippo Insurance. We were all about doing home insurance based on sensor data. That's not been done before. Phenomenal journey. Met a lot of great folks who are experts in that, which ultimately drove me to an understanding of, hold on for a second. There is a whole slew of people who are uniquely expert at what they do. And if we could all come together and unlock that wave that I consider the future of work, of like these experts being able to work with anybody on anything, that'd be phenomenal, which gave the starting point for Lettuce.
Amazing. And that word that you've used a few times, unlock, really resonates with me personally, because my personal mission statement, which also happens to be our company purpose, is to unlock access to opportunity through innovation, inspiration, and inclusion. And at EQ, we're on a mission for zero admin, which is our mission for the company. And when we had first had a conversation, you really resonated and connected with me, because I feel like the work that you're doing is allowing more people to reach their full potential. And so why don't you talk, Ran, just a little bit about how the rise of the solopreneur, and also we can call them contractors, and there are many different classifications which we can get into, is reshaping the way that companies think about talent, but also reshaping the way that people think about opportunity. Because I've been thinking about that a lot, and a lot of people that I know in my network have decided, for whatever reason, to embark on a portfolio career, highly qualified, highly talented individuals. So I'd love to hear your take and perspective on that.
I love that framing because I think it's really well informed by a couple of movements that are happening around us. First, I think you're absolutely right. The concept of portfolio is very present. Clearly, with the new generation of folks coming out of school, where by the time they graduate college, they already had 3-4 jobs in parallel. People are talking about polyworking. I'm now seeing people coming out of high school having had at least one startup and one idea and one other thing. So that's definitely happening with the younger generation. I also see that movement actually with the older generation, the Gen Xers, where they have been at a corporate career trajectory for a while, and they're talking about what's next. Can I actually have a portfolio of things that I can do that allow me to tap into all the things that I've learned and built through my career and give it away in multiple jobs, not just one. That all meets, I think, the other movement, which is a very dynamic need by the people hiring that talent.
Sure.
It says, I need experts in something today that may be different than what I did in 6 months, that may evolve 3 months later with the rise of AI and the fast pace of change and globalization. It's very hard for even the largest corporations to say, I'm going to need this specific skill of a marketing website copywriter for the next 7 years, which would have been trivial 2 decades ago. Now it isn't, because maybe AI is going to do half of that. So
Sure.
both of those come together to say there is a very dynamic marketplace with demand for those skills and with supply for those skills that can be best served by people offering it as a solo.
Yeah, it's interesting because you and I both had experience in large corporate. So at Adecco, I was the global president of innovation. And obviously you mentioned some of the larger companies that you work with, the McKinseys, the PayPals. And on one hand, when you're at McKinsey, you are providing that service to the large corporate, right? And then as a small, mid-sized business even, and there's a rise of the startups, to get access to that type of talent had traditionally been reserved for the larger organizations. And then what you start to see is those that had worked at McKinsey's, the others, they start to decide, actually, maybe my expertise might make more sense if I offer it in a slightly different format as a solopreneur. But then having said that, even the larger consulting firms, the way that they interact with their bench, they then have more contracting arrangements with those. So nobody's really holding on to the, I want to say, the human capital all at once anymore. It's more liquid and fluid. So that fluidity in the market, I think that there's a huge opportunity to obviously connect people. That's the world that we're in. And then maybe we talk a little bit about the work that you're doing, but where do you see the biggest opportunity for, I suppose, technology to empower this growing workforce?
Yeah, I think you're connecting the dots in a way that's really smart, because basically what consulting firms have been doing for many years is band and disband teams based on specific needs. They're able to do it because they have a very large bench and they know how to recruit and retain, etc. But when you are at McKinsey and you go to a project, they cobble together 3 experts from here and 2 experts from there and a partner from the other and just make them work for the client. 2 startups ago, I decided to do that at my own company, and we literally regularly band and disband teams to solve problems that we wanted to do within the company, so that if you are in an engineering team, you're not always solving the exact same thing. You actually come in to solve a business customer problem, and then you change what you do. So I think that going forward, a lot more companies would go to market by defining what they want to solve and recruiting talent for a specific niche of problems or timely projects. And then the talent should be ready to engage that way. And I believe that, talking about unlock, there is an enormous amount of talent that don't feel ready to engage that way. And if we create the right infrastructure to say it is safe, it's financially sound, it's well structured, you can offer your services, your knowledge, your expertise 3 months at a time, 6 months at a time, 3 companies at once, you're going to see that unlock opens up and a lot of opportunity being created for folks who might have been held back from trying it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is not really well understood when you start to build your own practice, let's say, whether you're providing a service as a consultant, it's not just you identifying and finding a customer and finding the need. It's understanding how that buyer buys. And when you're a large corporate, and if you were providing that service as a large corporate, there was something that happened prior to that that you probably weren't aware of, which is called an MSA. And so that master service agreement that got signed allowed your business to engage with that other organization. But throughout that process, there were a bunch of checks and balances. And if you've been a buyer, you'll know that. But if you've been inside of a team, you're like, whoa, I actually found a need here. And I didn't realize that I had to do a compliance process that was X amount of steps and took this amount of time. And I think part of that is making sure that you have the right documentation in place. So I'd love to kind of segue into how Lettuce is leveraging automation and AI to simplify the management overall for independent workers.
Yeah. So you're definitely highlighting something that many people are unaware of, and that to engage in that level of services, you need to be a pro.
Mhm.
And to be a pro means it's no longer something that you do, from your bedroom over a Zoom call to a couple of clients that you know from past life. You're now saying, okay, I'm going to sell my services to companies who buy a certain way with MSAs, with compliance, etc. So where Lettuce shows up is we say, you have the talent, you know what it is that you deliver. We don't want you to worry about all of the back office processes that comes with doing this like a pro. So we say, let us worry about that. And we'll set you up. So let's say you're an expert in marketing, you're great at customer research, you know how to open up markets for large brands. We can then help you set up all of the infrastructure. You need an LLC and an S Corp. You need to have a business bank account, accounting, taxes, withholding, all of those boards that come before you're able to sign the MSA and say, sure, I'll provide a service.
Right.
We'll do that for you. And then we immediately upgraded you from what I would consider a freelance
Sure.
to a business of one. You now have a business. You're a pro. You can sell your service to the highest caliber Fortune 100 companies in the world. And by the way, you start building brand equity into your business of one. So at some point, you can expand it. You can potentially sell it. There might be other opportunities that go beyond selling your extra hour for an hourly rate. And that's what Lettuce stands for. We believe that the future is independent and people are going to work for themselves. We want them all to be a business of one and not just I freelance. It's a step change.
Yeah, I think one of the services that you really provide is a level of polish. As you mentioned, professionalism that everyone is striving for, but isn't quite sure when they go out alone on how to achieve that. Maybe you achieve that in your marketing, maybe you achieve that in your brand or when somebody interacts with you. But that polish is important as you go through the steps of purchasing on the corporate side, because they're also assessing you and your service and how serious you are when they go through that process, right? And if you haven't had that experience, it's hard to kind of get your head around that and understand that.
Right. And you typically are used to working with the client, the actual person who engages with you, and they may appreciate your skill and your expertise, but there is a whole machinery behind it. As you mentioned, procurement department and legal department and compliance department. And you need to come across as professional, as polished to those folks as you are to your actual content client so that you get the next job and the renewal and the extension, because they also play a role in that.
Yeah.
Packaging yourself in a way that comes across like a professional business allows you also to start charging the right rate and positioning yourself against competition and say, hey, you know what? You can go hire McKinsey or you can go hire me and ex-McKinsey at a rate that is not as high, but certainly higher than I would do, a year ago when I was just coming out of it and winging it.
Right.
There is a huge opportunity there that I think people are now understanding that can be a great unlock.
So you're helping people get from winging it to actually flying, right? So, so no more winging. You're going to start flying with lettuce. That's really how I see it. And I think one of the challenges that people have, or the people I speak to that are running businesses, is like balancing this strategic mindset of here's the long-term vision, but actually today this is what I've got to get done. And so I'd love you to talk about how that balance can be obtained between strategic vision with both large organizations and then the lean startup, because one of the things I think about is the agility that is garnered from being a small company that larger organizations can leverage and benefit from, which is one of the reasons why they should bring you inside the organization. But I just want to get your take on that, and if that's something that you've been thinking about as well.
Yeah. So I don't think I have a full prescription, but here is how I think about it. I think there is a notion of cadence that you build into your day, your week, your month that says, how much time at what frequency am I spending on my day-to-day operation, making sure that I deliver what I promised, I'm professional about it, etc. How much time at what cadence am I putting into bettering my craft and becoming better and better at what I do? And then what's the cadence and how much time I'm spending on strategic positioning of where else can I go? What partnerships can I form? Maybe one of the ways to offer my services is in conjunction with two other freelance business of ones who have adjacent complementary skills to mine. And what I've been doing and recommending others to do is build it into your schedule. It's very famous that what you really do is what's in your calendar.
Absolutely.
So if you said, I have a weekly slot that I regularly put on my calendar, and it's called strategic thinking, and I don't have to force what's in it before it shows up, but I block things out. And for those, couple of hours, I'm now thinking about how do I further the business that I'm building. Then it becomes part of your cadence. And I'm really big on that, because I think once you build a habit that says, here are the parts of my day and week where I'm delivering my work. Here are the parts of my day and week where I'm getting better and better at what I do. And here are the parts of my day and week that I strategically think about growing. Then you get to be doing it regularly. And then, involve others. You might be somewhere in your cycle of strategic growth, and others around you may be somewhere else in their strategic growth cycles. When you talk about it together, that togetherness may actually give you an edge that is strategic about the clientele, about how you position your services, about pricing, about packaging. It's very meaningful.
Yeah, I love the way that you think about the company of one, because to some, to the naked eye, that may seem that you're talking about one person. But what we're actually talking about is somebody that can be agile and offer a service and flexibility, but connect into an ecosystem. And they can plug into the ecosystem in your world to help them connect to a larger ecosystem, which are their customers, right? The ones that have the opportunities at scale. So you almost like enhance your sales team. And I was on the board at Microsoft Services for 4 years. And that was really where I learned. I shouldn't have been on the board. I learned more from them than I gave them. But it was a great time. And they asked me back twice, so I must have said something that was good. But I really learned kind of the channel partnerships. And if you focus on what you're good at, what you're really, really good at, you can have an ecosystem built around you that can help you scale that. And that's what I really love about your approach, because running a company of one can be lonely. People start and they're not entirely sure where to go all the time. They don't have a roadmap, but there might be somebody, like you said, who's a little bit further along. And we started EQ as a community first.
Yes.
And you can get those learnings from that community. I think one of the things, Ran, that I'd love you to share is the advice that you would give leaders building solutions for the next era of work, where talent may be just as likely to be a contractor than a full-time employee. Like, how should you approach this?
Yeah, I think the term you used, agility, and that concept of an ecosystem, both play into that mindset. I think if you are a leader of a reasonably complex organization, could be a Fortune 100, but could be 2 tiers below that and still reasonably complex. You should understand that at this time, with the advances of AI, with automation, with globalization, the ability to tap into an agile network of capable people who can solve problems is almost unlimited. And you should start your day by saying, okay, what problem am I solving? And once you have clarity on what problem you're solving, you can then go to how am I solving it? Am I solving it my existing team? Am I hiring more people into my team? Am I tapping into the ecosystem of talent? How agile do I need it to be? And the reason I'm starting with what problem you're solving is because agility would show itself up immediately. If the problem you're solving is, I need to restructure General Motors for the next 20 years, that's a different type of problem than I need to launch a brand for Gen Z in Latin America before year end. They lend themselves to different type of solutioning and therefore talent pools and therefore the ecosystem you would tap to get that. So start there positioning it in your mind. And then remember that the talent pool doesn't end with the walls of your organization. There are so many solutions out there that maybe your company has already established, maybe you need to push the boundaries. But that ecosystem of talent is just unstoppable.
Yeah, one of the things you got me thinking about as we're talking and as founders, when you're in a large organization, as we both have been, and then you kind of break the shackles from that, you are forced to innovate and iterate. And the reason you're forced is survival rests upon your innovation and iteration. Therefore, you continue to seek knowledge, information that others may not, and you go and continue to discover. Then you actually realize you know more than you knew than when you were in a big organization, because you're looking outside and not always inward. You're thinking about your customers, you're thinking about the market, you're living paranoid, you're thinking about everybody else out there, you're thinking about partners, you're thinking about ecosystem, and then you're coming back and building, and then you're going out again and again. One of the things I think that the company of one can provide, if I think about it more deeply, is actually innovation to the larger organizations, because they become your eyes and ears in the market. And that's why you would hire a larger consulting firm to be the eyes and ears in your market, because they have a bunch of different customers. But if you think of the struggles of a company of one, just to be a company of one, they're much greater than the cushion of being inside of a large organization. So maybe that's something that people should also think about as well, right?
I have almost nothing to add to what you said, because I think that is the mindset. Like, innovation comes from a need. And those business of ones are constantly living in a state of need. We try to help them. The ecosystem around them is helping them, but they stay very sharp because of that need. And everybody should try to tap into that innovation, because that's what moves ultimately the results. And once you have the innovation, you can systematize it and scale it to the large org. But tap into that innovation, because it's going to give you the edge over what's unknown to you right now.
Yeah, we see this a lot, even in our business, where we're focused predominantly on helping companies get access to talent. That was the initial need. As the market changes and shifts, finding the talent isn't as hard as finding the business. So now we help the smaller firms and companies of one get access to people that want to purchase their service. by giving them signals and insights. It's a similar process, but it's a different problem. And the problem in this scenario is, look, if you don't have business as a firm, then you don't have a company. And I always say there's two things you need to run a company. You need to be able to get customers and keep them happy. If you do those two things, you have a company. And then how do you do that at scale, right? Well, Ran, look, I always enjoy our conversations and discussions. We're getting to the tail end of this conversation. What would you like to leave the audience with? Our audience is a combination of small business owners, a combination of companies of ones, Fortune 500 executives. What learnings would you like to leave this audience with, and things that they should think about when they think of Ran and lettuce?
Wow, that's a big premise. So I would love for folks to walk away from this embracing the concept that a business of one is a meaningful part of the future of work and everything around us, and therefore add that into the consideration set. So if you're at a large company, remember that you should tap into that pool of business of one. If you are a freelancer, an expert, come to Lettuce, take a look at what we offer, learn how to make yourself a professional, and offload a lot of that back office management to us. And then if you're in between, you're still at the corporate, you want to be on your own and you're unsure, we'd love to support you. We regularly host webinars. We have large solo summit. One is coming in November, which is the Entrepreneur Month. There are a lot of sources of information to get you to know what the next step is like. So I'd love for all of those to spend a few more cycles thinking about business of one as the future.
Well, Ran, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you for this special edition of the AI in Recruiting podcast. And this is our AI business update. You've been absolutely fantastic, and I think anybody listening in today has got a huge value, especially the companies of one, and how they can evolve and scale their business. So just wanted to say, again, appreciate having you on the show, and look forward to continuing to see Lettuce scale and thrive.
Thank you so much. As always, real pleasure.
If you got value from today's episode, share it with someone in your network, your team, your boss, or that recruiter still stuck in 2015. Be sure to follow the show so you never miss what's next in hiring and AI. Until next time.